call to order the Thursday, April 25th meeting of the AMATS Policy Committee. And Craig, Mr. Lang, would you like to take roll?
Sure, it could be interesting. Let's see, Cindy Heil is here for Alice Edwards. Jennifer Witt is in for Mr. Campbell. Mr. Michaelis is in here for the mayor. Mr. Flynn is here for himself, as he usually is. Mr. Birch is not right here, and Assemblymember Steele is sitting in shopping for us. And that's a quorum.
Thank you. And would you like to make the public development announcement?
Sure.
Please?
All of the AMATS meetings are public meetings. The public is given an opportunity to comment. If we have a business item, we'll have a presentation by either staff or a consultant, and the committee will be given a chance to discuss, and at that point, the public will then be invited to comment.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes to it?
Move to approve.
Second. Any objections? Okay, the agenda is approved. There are no minutes. Could you give us the status of where we are with the minutes?
I did not print that off. Jill, do you have a quick update, or?
I didn't print it, no, I don't have
We
it
can
in my
expect
head.
some next
We do
month.
have,
Yes.
yes, there's 3 sets out routing and being reviewed.
So it'll almost catch us
And
up.
there's a couple more, I think, on the other side.
Yeah, we're pretty close.
Thank you.
We're moving.
Excellent, we'll see you
That's
next month then,
that's-
but none to approve today. Business items, we only have one. Business item 5A, AMATS Policies and Procedures Amendment, request to release for public comment. Mr. Lang?
Yes, just to refresh everyone's memories, our policies and procedures are what we use to dictate how AMATS operates. It talks about all sorts of different things, including the allocation, how much we spend on roads versus transit versus congestion mitigation, air quality issues. So one of the items that's in there that we wanted to add is this policy and procedure related to using standardized socioeconomic data for transportation modeling. We've had extensive discussion at the technical committee. Originally, the policy committee did ask staff to create such a policy and procedure. And again, it's gone through work sessions with the TAC and several different meetings. We've tweaked it a little bit, and so what we have before you is what the technical committee asked, recommended that this be released for 30-day public comment. There were a couple changes that were made, I think just one actually, that were made to, I believe it would be section A. Let's see, I'm looking at the numeration here, so it would be A 3D. I don't know that that's correct, it looks a little odd to me, but at the top of the second page, if you go down a little bit, you'll see B, where it starts, the AMATS TAC shall coordinate with the Matsu Borough, DOT, Kabata, etc. We just tweaked the language in the second sentence, which starts, if AMATS adopts or incorporates travel demand data from a consultant or other entities, then the outputs must meet FHWA validation report requirements. That sentence was tweaked just a little bit from when we had it at the TAC. It seemed it was a little confusing, and so we just tried to make it a little more, have it make a little more sense. Maybe by you reading it now, it's still confusing to you, but we did try to tweak a little bit to make it clean it up a little bit. That's the only change from when the TAC looked at it.
Actually, there's one other slight change, Madam Chair. We referenced a model application checklist for the consultants, and we just removed that for the time being to allow the TAC an opportunity to review that again and then approve it. So we removed that sentence.
Okay, so what we have before us is a refined version of what the technical committee had seen, and the recommendation is that it go ahead and be released for public review, and
Right.
based on public review and further review by the TAC, we'll get it back for approval.
Right, yeah, so it's not up for you today for approval, we're asking you to release it for 30-day public review.
Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions. One, I want to make sure I understood. The technical advisory committee deleted the reference to the model checklist because that's being updated, is that correct?
No, actually, they didn't have an opportunity to approve that checklist yet. It was originally in the original draft language that we brought before them. They've seen a similar checklist that's used from Virginia DOT, but they didn't actually have a chance to go over that checklist and approve it. And so when we brought this forward, we still had that sentence in there. And so we'd like to afford them that opportunity to review that checklist before we add it into this language. I don't think that for this particular language, for this policy, that reference to a checklist is necessary because we can always hand a checklist out to a consultant or a regional entity to say, these are the assumptions that we use, what are you going to use? It's more, the checklist is developed, is if you were, it's like going to a site review for a developer and the muni hands them a checklist of what your plat needs to have. Well, if you come to us, we need to look at certain assumptions that you're using in your model. Maybe you have different land use assumptions than we do, or maybe you have new and updated information that we don't have. So what is that so that we know what you're doing and then we can either adopt that or not. So it's just a little checklist that a planner or a Transcad modeler can work with the consultant or the contractor or another regional entity to make sure that they're all on the same page.
And there was a sentence in this that included a reference to checklist. And since we haven't developed that checklist yet, we took that sentence out. But the TAC had seen it with that language in there.
Or could you just, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, or could you just leave it in there and then put a parenthesis to be developed?
Yeah,
That would make me feel a little bit better, just because, that's going to be something that people want to have input into. And so if we could leave, even recognizing its perspective, that was prospective, not perspective. I think it would be worthwhile to let folks know and understand that that's going to be part of the process.
right, what the expectations are.
Yeah.
Okay, so the language that was in the original one adopted by the technical committee, I'll just read it and see if that, with your addition, if it would meet your intent here. It says, it would, after sub-area allocations, insert a sentence that says consultants and other entities should refer to the procedures listed in the AMATS travel model application checklist, and then in parentheses, to be developed, in paren, for further guidance.
I think that would
Does
be,
that do it?
yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. So that would be a good hybrid for,
Yeah, so I would like to move that into this version before it goes out for public comment. Would that be acceptable to you, Madam Chair?
yes, and I think procedurally we should start with a motion and then we'll amend.
Okay, so I will move to approve,
Second.
or the release for public comment, and then I'll move to amend to include the original TAC language with the parenthetical to be developed, so that that's available for the public to think about.
I'll second that as well.
Okay, so we have the original motion and then proposed amendment, and is this the time that I open it up for public comment?
Yeah.
You can do it anytime, really.
Would you guys like to comment? Anybody have any additions or changes to that, to what we've talked about so far? Actually, I think, Cindy, was there another one?
And I have another amendment, but should we?
We should finish this.
We should do that one first. Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor to insert a sentence as modified to the second page, little b, second sentence. Any further comments? Any objections? Okay, so the amendment passes. Ms. Heil, you said you had another amendment?
I would move to add a clarifier on the very first large A on the first page. And that is, AMATS really doesn't approve projects, so we would like to add at the very end of the sentence where it says projects that require approval by AMATS as part of the MTP, the UPWP, and/or TIP. Because it's within those documents that we're doing the work that this would be applied to. So
Should we
it's a
do the whole paragraph?
clarification. The whole paragraph says, the AMATS TAC shall adopt standardized household employment forecasts and sub-area allocations for use in modeling all transportation plans, programs, and regionally significant projects at that require approval by AMATS as part of the MTP, UPWP, and/or the TIP.
I'd second. For discussion, please.
Yeah. Cindy, do you want to explain what, I mean, I heard your earlier comments. Do you want to explain further as to why you think that would be, why that's necessary? I mean, it seems a little superfluous to me.
You can help.
If I may, I has just. it
Go to
was,
grab the gavel for a second here.
Thank you, I'll pass the gavel here. The way the paragraph is worded implies that AMATS actually approves regionally significant projects. And actually regionals, this is the struggle that the TAC had in the last MTP update, in that with the Kinnickinnic Crossing established as a regionally significant project, we had to consider it, and that it needed to be evaluated as part of our MTP. However, the AMATS group, technical and policy committees we approve funding for projects, but we don't approve the project designs, design elements, et cetera. So that was just a suggested, but actually I can just, it's okay to withdraw.
Okay, we can do that too.
I see your way as being superfluous.
It is.
It is, okay, never mind.
I withdraw.
I second the withdrawal, since I seconded it.
And I
understand.
I'm reading it more clearly to this time. I can see your point that it is a little superfluous. And if the technical committee has any suggested changes, they can do it after the public review.
Really great. So, sorry, I didn't mean.
Sorry, that's okay. I felt fuzzy when I was reading it. Okay, so we have the main motion before us. Oh, thank you.
And I had one more question, if I might, Madam Chair. It isn't final yet, but there's obviously legislative consideration as to the future of one of the entities named a couple of different places in this proposed policy, and which suggests it may be somewhat ephemeral.
I like that word.
Sorry, Madam Minutes Clerk. And I just wonder if maybe we perhaps should contemplate removing it and allow it to fall into the and other entities category. And offer that.
You talking about this one right here?
Yeah.
So just simply remove the, wherever Kabata is shown,
Yeah.
it had them included as other entities. And I understand that the technical committee discussed similarly the Kenai Peninsula Borough, if there's a relationship, if they were another entity that were interested.
Sure.
And so, is that a suggestion you would?
I would suggest both.
So I'll move to remove references to Kavada and consider them to be part of the other entities category.
I would second
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to remove reference to specifically to Kabata, recognizing that there's potential changes there, and also that recognizing that they could be still addressed as part of other entities. Discussion? Cindy, you were at the technical committee.
That was on one of the work sessions a long time ago we added. I mean, the idea was to make sure that those folks that would have information that would come through, we need their names specifically to make sure that everybody worked together. But understanding that there are some changes in the wind, that it would save us having to do an edit later maybe. But right now, they're still an entity, and that nothing has changed formally.
Just a question. So, but wouldn't they still be coordinated with if you put them down there as other entities?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would happen regardless, right?
that's correct.
And we can open it to the staff and the folks that were at the technical committee meeting. I was absent. You see an issue if we actually
Madam Chair, this is Lance Wilbur, Transportation, Public Transportation. My recommendation is get the clock started, get it up for review. There's going to be a lot of comments on it. If we hear of any strong considerations that that entity needs specifically, I think we could do it, but I don't think it's going to water down the intent of consistency.
Okay, any other comments from the public? Okay, we have before us, is it a motion? Did you
Yeah.
move? You did, and it was seconded, to remove a specific reference to Kabata throughout the P and P, and I think they're just in two places on the second page. Anybody opposed? Okay, so it is passed, the Second Amendment to remove specific reference to Kabata. So at least, any other changes recommended by the
But on the
committee?
record, you'll also say, but to be added to other entities, correct? Somewhere. Because the motion was to be added to other entities, so.
Oh, and there it is, so if you think about it, and other, so if you get rid of that, it's, you just say other.
Oh, okay.
They'll be,
For both places.
we'll consider them another entity.
Okay,
And that'll be in the minutes.
right, that's what I just want to make
Yes.
sure that that was clearly identified.
Yes, that they are part of the other entities then. Other entities, quotation. Any further discussion? Okay, we have the main motion before us as amended, with two amendments. Anybody opposed? Okay, PMP draft PMP number 6, as amended, is released for public review. And we'll see it after it goes back through the public and through the technical committee.
Well, my thanks to the technical advisory committee. Nice job.
Well done, you guys. Thanks. Okay, informational reports. It brings us to item 6A, the AMATS tip ranking criteria. Greg?
Just letting the policy committee know that these three criteria, the roadway, the transportation alternative, and the CMAC ones are out for public review and comment out till the end of May, I believe. So that's 48, 49 days or so since the date when we released them. And wasn't planning on going through them in detail, but there was a lot of work done, 8, 10, 12 hours worth of work sessions, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of staff time to tweak these and make them, as objective as we can, and to also just make sure we're hitting the latest and greatest stuff as it relates to the new authorization, AMATS 21, making sure we're paying attention to that sort of stuff. So there they are, and happy to answer questions, but that's just letting the committee know that they are out for public review and comment.
So with the release of these, now this is, it's like the first official kickoff for developing the new tip, is that correct? So I just had a question, and I'm sorry to bring this up earlier. As we kicked off the MTP, remember there was a recommendation, and then there was the policy committee actually adopted a set of guidelines or boundaries for the development of the MTP. Is there going to be something like that for the tip?
I hadn't planned on anything like
Is there a
that.
needed one, like there was for the MTP? Because we made various assumptions. Straight up front, we said, the bridge will be in it.
Right.
We said, this is the model we are going to use. There were certain things that we said so that we wouldn't, down the road, have to make those arguments all the time. And I'm wondering, coming into this tip, is there certain things we want to make sure that, like the ground rules for the development of this new tip under map 21?
Well, I was just thinking of some of the stuff that we have in our current policy and procedures related to the tip, such as we don't rank and score grandfathered projects. Once they have been grandfathered, once they've gotten the approved environmental document, and they're in the tip, we don't rank and score them, they stay there. Now, our practice has been, we rank and score them anyway, just to kind of see that our criteria still make sense, kind of ground truth them, and also to kind of get a feel for, are those still our priorities? And they have always come up that those projects are at the top, and even though they're grandfathered. So I'm happy to entertain any idea, anything that the PSC wants to do. I think that's a good place to start, saying that once we've got an approved environmental document and your clock starts ticking on your time trap, you want to, you want to keep those in there unless there's a really good reason not to keep them in your program. I can think of other ideas that.
I mean, yeah,
I would say that the MTP is the sideboards for the tip.
Right, oh, yeah, well-
And I don't want to get us so busy developing ground rules that we're not getting ground moved. So,
No,
so I appreciate what you're saying, Cindy, but I'd rather just
I just asked the question.
dig in.
Not that we want to.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is an interesting process because it will be open for public nominations and so there is everything from soup to nuts that end up getting evaluated. And if the technical committee, working with staff, wants to recommend some specific things to really give higher priority, and I think the criteria actually do that, give some focus and priority on those projects that are actually recommended in the MTP. So maybe just something to ask staff to take a look at if there's a recommendation, but otherwise, I would agree that typically we would look at the MTP, but it's not spelled out anywhere as the primary
what's the monster?
thing to, the monster to be implemented, yes. Okay, so it's out for public review until the end of May, and then it will go back to staff and the technical committee to come up with any refinements and back to the policy committee for approval. Thank you. Second quarter obligation report. Dennis Rudolph?
Bart Rudolph, DOT. This is the colorful spreadsheet you have before you. Comes to you every quarter, so just a recap of what this is. This is a list of projects in the TIP. The colored columns are numbered 1, 2, and 3. The first column is the amount that's in the TIP. The second column is what we've obligated so far, and the third column is what we anticipate yet to obligate. I'll just hit some highlights here. Third project down, Eagle River Road Rehab, we de-obligated $3.6 million due to a low bid, so that money came back into the program. We have to obligate a couple $100,000 on the Oldland Highway Rehab project. We anticipate to obligate $1 million in the O'Malley Road project for right-of-way acquisition still this year. Fireweed Lane, we closed that project out, so that put an additional $1.8 million back into the program. Pavement replacement program, we have 2 projects. The first one is the A Street resurfacing, and that's the $3.9 million that we see yet to obligate. We hope to also obligate a design start for Eagle River Road, milepost 0 to 5.3. It's the first section of the major reconstruction project that's starting this summer. Dowling Road, a couple down from there. In order to fully obligate this, we need to obligate $22.9 million out of this year's program, which is more than what the TIP had in it. We need to obligate $42 million, so it's that amount, then we're gonna AC 12.4 from next year's program, and then we have about $6.8 million in earmarks to use to get that number up there. So to close that gap, we use the de-obligations that I mentioned earlier to fully fund it, and I'll get to that in a second. Nothing else big to report. The safety improvement project is going to obligate as planned. On the second page, you see some more small de-obligations that happened. Table 4, the transportation enhancements table. Nothing big to report there. The bicycle project implementation project is the $1 million project we have on that TIP. We're working with the municipality right now to come up with a list of projects and divide between the state and muni who's going to do what, and hopefully obligate most of that money this year. Everything else looks okay. A few more de-obligations at the bottom of that page. And then on the third page is the CMAQ table. We haven't obligated much yet, but everything plans to obligate as planned there. We don't see any differences in what's in the TIP. On the fourth page is where we total everything up, and you can see in the red outline box that we are just almost $500,000 short of balancing out. And so at this point in time, we're required to be within 10%. So we're within 1.57% right now. So those de-obligations really helped us get closer to that funding gap in Dowling, and we're pretty much almost there. Pretty confident that we'll be able to fully fund Dowling because of that. But it'll be tight. And then the bottom two sections are just for information. These are outside of the AMATS program, just other projects that the state has that are starting some money in there. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions. First, Bart, can you help me out with the math on the Dowling Road? I see,
So the total construction cost, or what we anticipate, is going to be 42 million, close there, give about, that's just rough math. So if you work backwards, we have $12.4 million in next year's program that we're going to borrow, and then we have $6.8 million in earmarks. And so you subtract that from the 42 point whatever, that $22.9 million is what's left. So that's what has to come out of this year's program.
okay. That helps, thank you. And that Dowling is down in table 8, table 5, table 8 somewhere? Sorry, table 6.
On the first,
Yeah, that is, it's the same project, but we advanced the utility phase. So that $42 million is construction, and then you had to add this, but we used this earlier to just get it started. So it's not part of that $42 million that I talked about earlier.
The 8 point,
The 8.977, yeah.
okay, that's.
Because that's already been obligated, that, because we started the utilities first, so we could be ready for construction. So it's gonna come down to the wire to get that obligated this year, and we could move the utilities first before we could do the construction, so we thought, go ahead and do it.
Okay, and this is the phase,
C Street to Minnesota.
C Street to Minnesota?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. If I could continue on a
Sure.
different tack here, Madam Chair, thank you. On the pavement replacement program,
Yes.
on table 3, A Street specifically, there has been some discussion around changing the lane configuration. Would that be part of this project, or is that simply replacing the surface pavement?
Right now, it's just a straight pavement replacement and put back what we have already there.
Okay.
But it could be open to discussion as part of this project, it's just striping.
Okay, well, that would be spectacularly unpopular with certain people.
And that's not the plan going forward right now.
Okay, great. If that starts
Put
to
back
become,
what's there.
if it starts to become part of the plan, would you be kind enough to let me know?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll hear about it.
That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
any other questions? Questions from those in the audience for Mr. Rudolph? Okay, thank you, Bart. Public transportation update.
And Lance says, you're on. Thank you. Here we go.
Great, well, thank you. My name is Christine Sunday. I'm with the Planning Division for the Public Transportation Department with the municipality. And I wanted to take this opportunity to go over with you some of the major activities that public transit is undertaking in 2015 with a focus on our departmental process for a service change. And that's timely for us because we're right now in the initial stages evaluating our service for a proposed July or August service change. And so the last service change that public transit instituted was in August of 2012. And it was a really minor update. It was mostly refining some running times and changing our schedules just a little bit. We do strive to annually evaluate our service, which may or may not lead to a service change. And then we also want to make sure that we, if we do change our service, we try to limit it to once per year. A service change can involve adding trips or new service or completely new routes. It could be eliminating service, it could be realigning routes, and then it can also just be refining our running times. And it is a time-consuming process. It can take up to 7 months depending on the scope, and it does involve the entire public transit department. So it is a big undertaking. So So what are we doing internally as we begin the service change process? Oops. Well, we're continuously evaluating our running times. We do this throughout the year, not just when we're instituting a service change. And our ability to do this has greatly improved in the last couple of years with our new technologies on our buses. We have a lot more robust data, and we're able to really look at that and refine them based on reality. We look at our historical data for average drivers on average days, and then that way we can determine if we're attributing enough time for each trip. Staff is also looking internally at our operations, any safety issues that we know about. And then we are also analyzing any possible route changes or realignments. And all of those changes can be initiated through driver comments, staff comments, or public comments, and then they could also be the result of external factors like new developments going on. And then lastly, all of this analysis is taking place in the context of our budget, which is very important. And so for the proposed July service change, we are right now in the beginning stages, as I said. We're just evaluating our service and priorities, and we don't have a scope, a definitive scope at this point. But I did want to walk you through where we're at and what priorities we've already identified. So our Public Transportation Advisory Board, I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but it advises the Assembly and the Mayor on transit issues, and it also contributes to our long-range transit planning program. On the screen, you can see the priorities that the PTAB identified for 2013. So first was the alleviating overcrowding issues on the Route 45. The Route 45, if you're not familiar with it, runs from downtown through Mountain View, past Providence to Alaska Native Medical Center. Also increasing headways on our Route 75 to 30 minutes. And the Route 75 goes also from downtown, down Tudor, up to Cottonu and the VA clinic. Improving and increasing Eagle River service, and then also increasing and expanding South Anchorage service. All right. And then internally, department staff has met and identified priorities as well. The Route 45 and 75 were also identified as issues, and staff will be conducting some analysis on those. A possible safety issue on the Route 8 was identified by operations, and then it was also identified the need to, again, refine all of our running times for all of our routes. And there are a few more possibilities up there, and I'll go through some of these priorities in more detail in a minute. Okay. And so when analyzing these issues and evaluating changes in priorities, some of the important questions that we're asking ourselves internally are on the screen. And again, it's really important that we balance finances, efficiencies, equity, safety, and a host of other factors when we evaluate our transit system. So one of the department identified priorities that I previously mentioned was, let's get rid of that. Oops. Okay. Was the safety issue on Route 8 at Statham Hill. If you're not familiar with this area, this is Boniface here to the west. This is Turpin here to the east, DeBar to the south, and then the Glen is to the north, not shown on the aerial. And the specific issue that we're having is actually here at this kink at the bottom of Statham Hill. But we've had so far 4 incidents this year with our buses. It's particularly an issue in bad weather conditions. Currently, we do have a bad weather route in place. It's optional for drivers, and it loops around this neighborhood here. It's winding Norman to Winding Way, and then up to Edwards and back on route. And operations has identified that this is a poor long-term solution for the issue of Statham Hill. And so right now, staff is evaluating alternatives, including a no change option. And this is a picture of the hill, just if you've not been out there. This specifically is the really sharp turn I was talking about. And there is a decent amount of traffic also on this road, and a lot of times cars will park on both sides of the street. So it's just, even in the summertime, it's really an issue for our drivers. Okay. Another priority that was identified were our end of trip logistics on our Route 75 that serves to Cottonu and the VA. Right now, the end trip is the VA. They've built us a nice area for layover. They also allow our drivers to access their facility for breaks, and so it's really a nice arrangement right now. However, Tacotnu is a major ride generator for us, and right now we are serving the Tacotnu Shopping Center on both the inbound and the outbound. And so if you can imagine, on the inbound, we're entering the shopping center, going through all those stop signs, turning around here behind the theater, and then going out past all the stop signs as well to make the one stop on the shopping center near the intersection. And then we're going to the VA, and then we come back and do it again. And so it's an operational issue for us. It adds a lot of running time. And then there's also the issue of traffic backing up at that first stop sign on the site. And so it's just been an issue for us, and it's something that we are going to analyze more closely. Another priority area was the Muldoon transfer facility on Muldoon at DeBar. Let's see, so it's right here. The Walmart is going in over here to the west. And right now, there's a signal at Muldoon and 12th, and that will be relocated to 11th. And the signal at 12th is really important for our riders for crossing Muldoon to make bus transfers. And so this is another situation that we're going to have to evaluate. Our blueprint update from 2009, which is essentially like our transit plan, our short-term transit plan, recommends that eventually we provide an off-street or a combination off-street and on-street facility here for our transfers. So again, it's on our radar, and it's something that we'll have to evaluate. And then, so there are a number of changes that we're evaluating for the service change. However, again, nothing is set at this point, and we always welcome feedback from AMATS and the public on this. So moving on from discussion about the service change process, we also have a number of capital projects that were taking place in 2013. We plan to complete UMed Phase 3 in 2013, which is the construction of an illuminated and safe quarter-mile pedestrian pathway on the north side of Providence Drive here. We'll also complete the design and bidding of UMed Phase 4, which includes expanding the bus stop at Alumni in Providence to include a pullout with space for up to 4 buses, a larger customized shelter, and then also road crossing improvements. And the goal of construction for Phase 4 is 2014. We're also moving forward with the Diamond Center Transit and Intermodal Improvements Project. And we hope to begin construction in 2014 with hopeful estimated completion in 2015. This shows the actual transit center as it exists today. This shows the planned improvements. The light blue lines here are showing the existing pedestrian facilities, and then all of the pink ones, which are sort of hard to see, but these are all the pedestrian improvements that we are proposing as part of this project. So it will really increase pedestrian accessibility to the site and our transit facility. The transit facility is tucked back here to the west of the mall. We'll also be improving drainage at that site. And then we'll also be making the transit center accessible in 2 directions with buses. Right now that they approach the transit facility within just one direction. And then lastly, as part of the project, we'll be improving the geometry and access on Diamond Center Drive at Diamond Boulevard up here. And that also will really increase our operational efficiency because that area gets really bogged down. Right, and then a few other capital projects worth mentioning. There's a capital project at Penland Parkway between Airport Heights and Burgaw. And this is a PM&E traffic project, but they've been great partners and are constructing ADA boarding pads, pedestrian amenities, and two bus pullouts. And the project will also be improving drainage, which you can see will really affect the operations of transit. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Walmart East on Navarre will be improving that stop and putting a bus pullout and boarding facility there. And then the state DOT is working on Muldoon Road Landscape Phase 3. And that whole project has been really important to transit. there are planned pathway, landscaping, and transit improvements. And they'll also be improving the length of the corridor to be fully ADA accessible and provide a protected pedestrian way and also LED illuminated stops. And that's really important for our riders as well as our drivers, who are then able to see the stops before they get there and see if there are any waiting passengers. So again, that's a really important project for transit. And it's also worth noting that all of these bus stop improvements in conjunction with our partners have really taken us a long way. In 1996, only 20% of our bus stops were ADA compliant, and in 2012, that was 78%. So 600 stops have been upgraded over that time span. And we're looking to continue that progress towards an accessible transit system. Great. There are also a number of other important activities that transit is taking on in 2013. Two specifically are federal requirements. First, by the end of April, we are required by FTA to complete our annual National Transit Database reporting as recipients of 5307 Urbanized Area Formula Funds. We are required to report various data on our financials, ridership, et cetera. And this data then is used nationally to apportion the FTA Urbanized Area Formula Funds. And annual reports are also presented to Congress. And so this is really important, and that's also a time-consuming process to compile all that data and report. Again, it's due at the end of April, and we're just about there, so that's good. Again, we'll be undertaking the service change as mentioned, and it may take place in July or August. And again, if you have any comments or want to provide any input on our service change, we're always, looking for comment. And then sometime this fall, we'll also be undergoing our triennial review by FTA. And this is similar to a certification review for an MPO. It's to examine our performance and adherence to FTA policies and requirements. So basically making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do and what we've committed to do. It will cover 24 areas, including ITS, planning, Title VI, maintenance, all those sorts of things. And again, to make sure that we're compliant with FTA, it's also a really good opportunity for us to receive technical assistance and to approve our processes. So again, a date has not been set. We thought it would be early fall. It looks like it's getting pushed back, but we're hoping by the end of 2013 that we'll go through that triennial. And so that's about it. As you can see, there's a lot going on in 2013 for transit. If you have any questions, I would be happy to try to answer them, or if you have any comments on the service change or anything like that, or if you want to follow up with me after the meeting, my contact information is on the screen.
Thank you. Any questions or?
A couple, actually. Somebody, thank you very much for the presentation. To date, what sort of service changes or new services have you contemplated with regards to Route 45?
Right now, the issue that's been identified for the 45 is that there are some overcrowding issues. We're looking at possibly adding additional trips. I think long-term, we want to sort of evaluate that service in general, and if there are other options to be more efficient, to tie in other routes, or there's definitely further analysis that we'll want to do long-term. And in the short-term for the service change in 2013, we're going to look at adding additional trips in the peak hour, or in the lunch hour. That's when we're seeing the most overcrowding issues.
The lunch hour. That's on 30-minute headways, right?
Yes.
Okay, lunch hour.
We also saw some overcrowding issues in the evening, so we're still evaluating, really.
Okay, well, if you wouldn't mind, just sort of, as you come up with ideas, just be interested to hear them. It was kind of close to my heart. And then, what thoughts have promulgated at this point on Eagle River and South Anchorage service? Or is that more preliminary still?
Yeah, I think at this point, we haven't looked at increasing service for this service change. I don't know, Lance, if you want to speak
Sure.
to that at all.
So Patrick, I think for 2013, we're trying to focus on the problems that we have, but adding new services, Christine mentioned, takes a lot more time, and we're not going to take the time if we don't have budget.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we don't. We have budget to make the modifications that we have, but I'm going to be talking to the board about, some some suggestions about different alternatives of revenue they might want to embrace, that present that to the administration. That would be able that we would use that money to add service in there. There's, as Christine mentioned, we've been looking at the 45, and where we're leaving them is between 11 and 2, but we have a couple rare runs. We're leaving people behind, so I think we can add a little service to meet those. But in combination with the 75 and the VA, we are looking at a modified kind of a new run on the 45 that would basically run directly from downtown directly to the VA without going south, by going through Mountain View. So there's a couple other options, because the reason for the 75 was to serve the VA.
Right.
And so, as Christine mentioned, we don't have a lot of it finalized. We're looking at different options, but we are not going to recommend something we can't fund.
Sure, sure. You know, on the 75, that turnaround at Tacotney, they have that advanced entrance, seems to me, looping there and having to stop in that outer loop and letting people walk to the mall or the theater is probably the best bet. But
Well, we looked at new entrance is actually going to be a Sam's Club on one side and a parking lot on the other. So we're not going to run the bus in through that intersection, because we'll have the store on one side, the parking lot on the other, and we'll be like driving down between the parking lot or in Diamond, if you will, between Sports Authority and Michael's and all of those places.
Huh.
We're not gonna enter there.
Have you talked to Siri at all? Have they come up with some ideas for you?
No, but I haven't talked to the mall owners. They've been very supportive in the past. And frankly, I've talked to the traffic engineer about approving the stop signs, and she's told me they just show up at night. And so, but the mall owner's been very helpful to accommodate what we've got. With the route that we have was created at a time when that wasn't that developed. So,
Yeah. And then finally, not that it's my problem, but I know you guys have been harassed relentlessly over service to the Anchorage Neighborhood Health Center location. Is that under consideration for
No.
this?
no, not for this service change in July or August. And we've come up with an alternative that would reroute the 75. And I think that was one of the ones that the PTAB had been interested in the past. In addition, and Christine had mentioned it, but with all of these service changes, we don't just put it by surprise. We've already scheduled with the community councils to let them know that we're thinking about these issues at Statham and Tacotney, just to give them an early heads up. And then we'll have a more formal open process for the public to give us some guidance.
Yeah, well, if you could get to Mountain View on 45 as that develops, I'd be really appreciate it.
We are going to the Mountain View Community Council in May.
Are you good?
Mountain View and Northeast.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's all, Madam Chair. Appreciate the indulgence.
Sure. Any other questions or comments from the committee on this issue? And any from the public? Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation. Information. Okay, any comments from the committee?
Sure. Just so you know, that the Lieutenant Governor filed the LMP. It goes effective on May 8th, and we're working to try to get it to the EPA for approval. So that's
the limited maintenance plan.
Maintenance
Excellent. And you also had kudos in the paper, or Daily News said
Yeah.
that we were, what, the 14th?
We're number 14.
Cleanest and
As opposed to Fairbanks.
9th, 30th.
We have our contrasts in the state.
The thing is, I mean, Anchorage has been very proactive in getting its, dealing with its air quality issues. They've always taken a, let's make sure we can, if this is, take actions ahead of time before they become really big problems. And they should be commended about that.
Got one, Madam Chair. As you know, the Assembly reorganizes after every municipal election. At this point, the committee assignments have not been finalized. Part of the reason Mr. Steele is here is because he apparently has my unfortunate interest in this particular topic. So, if
I haven't, anyway.
we're going to solve that today. So we'll see what the ultimate Assembly delegation looks like. Hope it should have that in place for next month's meeting.
Okay, so we may see you, and we may not.
You never know.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, thank you.
But I would welcome Mr. Steele and thank him for his interest, because it's obviously a very important topic, and one that requires a fair amount of study to get even slightly.
Just to learn the acronyms.
Yeah.
Any comments from the mayor's office? Okay, well, thank you. With that, we are adjourned. It is like 1:48.